Gents, the first Sunday in October, it is now up for grabs. Our Rugby League Grand Final. Who would have thought that we'd be here?
Like Super Bowl, isn't it?
Yeah.
Could move around a bit. And I love seeing our major event being up for sale. I've got views where I want it to be played, but I want market value for it, and I want the governments to pay for it.
Well, the Storm chair and owner Matt Tripp has put a considerable amount of effort into this. He's the latest to push to bring a little bit of energy to a Rugby League Grand Final in Melbourne. What's he said?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about this, Vonnie, I spoke to Matt Tripp today. We've obviously got it running in the Telegraph tomorrow. Is he owns the Melbourne Storm, which we know, but what he is doing is he's putting together a proposal to buy the rights to the Grand Final. He wants to play it in Melbourne, obviously. But he wants to buy the rights to the Grand Final. So at the moment, there's an agreement between the NRL and the New South Wales government for, I think it's the next 30 years, for Grand Finals to be played in Sydney. But because of the COVID situation, they've got what they call the force majeure, which means unforeseen circumstances, the contract is no longer valid. So we've heard that the Queensland government are interested, the New South Wales government still want to host the Grand Final, and obviously Craig Bellamy earlier in the week came out and pushed the Victorian government to get involved and to try and get the Grand Final. But Matt Tripp, as an independent owner, wants to basically give the NRL a check, say, here, you do it like a boxing promoter. This is your pay, and what we'll do, I'll go and I'll put on the Grand Final, and I will basically see what's out there, see what he can pick up himself, and promote it himself, and wants to fill the MCG with it.
It's a revolutionary approach, and Matt believes that there'll be more growth and engagement of rugby league for Victoria, and he thinks that, given the Melbourne Storm more than likely will be there, he thinks it'll be a watershed moment for the game. Are you satisfied with the Rugby League Grand Final heading to the MCG?
Personally, no way in the world. For me, this is not about the Queensland politicians. This is about the people. And if the Grand Final this season is not to be played in Sydney, which is its historical base, it should be played in Brisbane. And regardless of what anyone might think about the Queensland government's actions on the weekend, or how much potentially this could be a financial bonanza for the game, the Grand Final is the showpiece event of our game. We sell everything these days. We sell State of Origin, we sell players mid-season, we sell this, we sell that. Surely the Grand Final stands for more than just money. For all these people that turn up at Suncorp Stadium every second week and sell the joint out, that travel hundreds of miles every weekend to go to a footy game. Mate, they did, but this is an extraordinary event. If the Grand Final moves out of Sydney, it should not go to Melbourne.
Crawls, I spoke to the Queensland Premier's office today. The Grand Final is not a priority for them. And
this is not about the politicians, Vonnie. It's about the people.
But their data suggests that the Queensland fans don't want the Grand Final there, which I found surprising.
They want Magic Round, Vonnie.
They like Magic Round, but they don't want the Grand Final. That's what Queensland government said to me.
Their data needs to be redone.
Yeah.
Because the people of Queensland last week drove hours to get to Rockhampton to that game, and then they walked away unhappy, let down. But I'll tell you what, the next time there's a game in Rockhampton, I'll bet you they turn up.
Can I add a further complication to this? John Barilaro, New South Wales Deputy Premier, Rugby League tragic. Last year, around April, when the game closed down, John Barilaro and Peter V'landys set a May 28 return date. Everyone said they were mad. It was unachievable. It could not happen. No other sport around the country was. I've interviewed John Barilaro tomorrow, and he doesn't want New South Wales to give up on this Grand Final. He insists that the state could be in a position, it's a could, and to drive vaccination, a treat for Sydney-siders at a time when the Sydney economy is going to need a bit of a push and shove. He thinks this is very achievable. Crawls, it is political because Peter V'landys wants money to build 4 suburban stadiums in Sydney. One at Liverpool, one at St George, one at Brookvale, etc. One at Penrith. So the government will work with him. Whether it's possible or not, the numbers are indicating it's not. But COVID one day and the following, they're two different things. We just can't predict that far ahead.
The interesting thing about this is how much, your conversations say with the Queensland government, where they say data shows Queenslanders don't really care that they get the grand final or not. Whether Melbourne, who are currently, or the Victorian government currently sitting back at the moment, this is not Tripp, this is the Victorian government, sitting back with this sort of Stephen Bradbury approach, hoping that New South Wales and Queensland will fill up with COVID cases, therefore it basically gives the NRL no choice but to take the game to Victoria. There's a lot of political posturing going on at the moment, and I dare say the conversations they had with you was all about trying to not pay over the price for it, and to try to pretend, it's like when you're buying
It is
house.
a bidding war.
It's a bidding war, and they're trying to show no interest in it.
But also,
to get
they
it cheaply.
did double down and say that they think that they deserve it, given that they've saved the game. They delivered a State of Origin series, and they think it would be just reward to stage the grand final at Suncorp Stadium, which is a purpose-built
You can't have it
rugby
both
league
ways.
stadium. I
You
know.
can't have it
But
both
Bonnie,
ways.
Which they also
Guys,
said the MCG is not suitable for viewing rugby league.
You can't
No, I
argue.
know.
You can't argue on the one hand that data shows that fans
It's
don't
not a
want
priority,
it,
but
but
we're
we
the
deserve
best,
it.
yeah.
And I don't want
Please.
the NRL Grand Final buried in the back pages with the comics and the Herald Sun and the Age, while it's all about the AFL Grand Final that weekend. We should, if the game's moving, we should consider Adelaide. If Brisbane don't want it, we should consider Optus Stadium in Perth, where we played Origins. But don't just give it to Melbourne.
You
where-
talk about it being the Super Bowl type thing that can move around the country. I don't care what you say. At the moment, rugby league is not that game. It's not the NFL in the United States. It's played in New South Wales and it's played in Queensland, and there's a team in Victoria.
The bottom
and that's
line
the
is,
extent
Scrolls,
of our
the bottom
game.
line is because of COVID and having to relocate to Queensland, accommodation costs, airfares, it's cost the game a lot of money.
We also take an Origin game to
I know we do.
Victoria every second or third year.
Yeah, that's great. It's not the grand final. The grand final is not about politicians, and it should not be about the highest bidder. It should be, historically, Paul, you know you believe in this. Historically, the grand final should stay in Sydney. You and I both know that we both agree with that. But if it has to go somewhere for this year
See, that's
and
where I
this
can't
year
agree
only,
with you.
we go to Brisbane.
I can't agree with you there. So like I said, I will forever state the grand final should be always stay in Sydney, because that's a tradition that the game should hang on to. I think that's one that AFL tried very hard to cling to last season, but through COVID restrictions had to take it to Queensland. But I think given the chance to take it this year, given the chance that because COVID will not allow it to be played in Sydney, then I think Melbourne are as fair
The
chance. I don't think
reason
Queensland government,
COVID
after what
won't
they did the
allow it to
weekend-
play in Sydney this year is one reason, because there can't be fans.
Yes.
And there can be fans in Brisbane.
Well, you don't know
And
there
also-
can't be fans.
Well,
Yeah,
at this
no.
stage, Buzz,
This
at this
might
stage,
even-
and this
well,
is
there's
why
not-
V'landys
there's
and
not- at this
the
stage,
team
there's
from
no
the
fans in
NRL.
Brisbane. At this stage, there's no fans in Brisbane.
But
Yes,
guys,
until Sunday. There's a lockdown till Sunday.
There
this
won't be fans
the
there this
decision's
weekend.
5 weeks away anyway. First week of the finals, they're going to make a decision. We're going to have a better COVID picture of every state, every capital city by then. And I'm sure V'landys and Abdo, who have done a sensational job, so will make the right decision.
The other thing that
the
V'landys-
best interest of the game.
Best interest of the game
the best interest of the game too could be
can come down to many things.
Yeah, and it could
More than money.
I'd say money is most likely. I'd say if Tripp can come in with an offer that trumps the three governments, and he can say, listen, let me put on, I'll have a guarantee from the Victorian government that, because they've got that new quick testing now that Eddie Maguire's been talking about, where you can get your test and basically know the result in 10 minutes, which will then allow you into the stadium, which will then means you can fill the stadium, which then means you can have a full 100,000 people at the NRL Grand Final, which you're not going to get in, you're going to get 55 in Queensland.
You could talk till tomorrow morning about all the things, mate.
But that's
You're not going to convince me.
45,000 extra people willing to pay to watch the game,
Okay,
which
JD.
in a time when there's so much financial hardship because of COVID restrictions is significant. If you've got 45,000 people...
I don't want to be a broken record, but exposure grand final week is everything for the game. For the
You're still gonna
teams,
get it
for
in
the
Sydney and
sponsors,
Brisbane. You're still gonna
for
get
the
it through
members.
the
But I'm
northern
saying you
states.
won't get it in Melbourne.
You're not going to get it if you get it in
We didn't get it
Queensland.
last year. We didn't get the grand final
Doesn't
breakfast.
matter.
We didn't get all that fanfare. You know, we missed
Yeah.
out on a lot. And I think upholding traditions of rugby league is really important. But we are at a really unusual time where
okay,
this
so
might
what-
be an event
we
that is
still
up
don't
for
know what
grabs.
the figures are going to show. But if Queensland come within the ballpark figure of what Melbourne could offer, the game's just got to go there. It does.
That's the way you
Usually
fight.
find it tough. battle.
It's been a strong start.
Very passionate.
All these different shades of grey coming into the argument.
It's been a strong start, gents. All right.